star system was quiet, too quiet for the alien fleet patrolling its edge. Commander Valak stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes fixed on the endless black outside. It was supposed to be a routine patrol, nothing unusual, just another empty sector to mark on their charts. Then the radar officer stiffened in his seat. A faint signal had appeared on the long-range scanner. At first, it looked like static, but then the officer froze and whispered something that sent a chill through the bridge. The signal carried a human war code signature, one that had not been used in over 300 years. Everyone knew humans had retreated from galactic wars long ago. Their fleets had been dismantled, their warships scrapped or hidden. No one had seen a functioning human battleship in centuries. The crew exchanged nervous glances, wondering if it was some kind of trick, or perhaps a relic drifting through space. Commander Valak ordered a scout ship to investigate. The small craft moved ahead, weaving through asteroid fragments as it approached the signal's origin. All communications were normal until the scout reported visual contact. The pilot's voice came through, tight with tension. He said he could see something in the dark, a shape too big to be debris. Before he could describe it further, every system on the scout ship froze. Power drained from its engines and lights flickered out. On the flagship's bridge, panic rippled through the crew as they lost all contact with the scout ship. The main view screen flickered. Then the image sharpened into the black silhouette of a massive ship sliding out from the shadows of a distant moon. It was unlike anything the aliens had seen. Its hull was dark and scarred, marked with deep burns, and dense from battles long past. No lights shone from its windows. It was completely silent, drifting slowly toward the fleet, as if carried by some unseen current. Yet there was no mistaking the design. The sharp angles, the heavy armor plating, the massive gun turrets along its sides, it was a human warship. The bridge fell silent. Even the hum of the ship's engines seemed to fade. Stories about these ships had passed through generations, tales of entire fleets erased in minutes. Some of the younger officers had never seen one except in old records. But the older crew members knew the truth. These ships had been feared for a reason, were built not just to win battles, but to end wars. Commander Valak tried to hail the warship, sending a standard greeting code. There was no reply. Instead, the ship kept drifting closer, its massive hull filling the screen. The crew's eyes tracked the strange shimmer that ran along the metal surface, like ripples in liquid. It almost looked alive. Sensors struggled to read it, showing false distances and impossible energy readings. It was as if the warship was there and not there at the same time. Valak felt the hairs on his neck rise. Something about the silence was wrong. Ships that big should hum with reactor energy, should pulse with heat and light. This one was cold, as though it had been waiting in the dark for centuries, untouched, unaging. And then, without warning, the largest turret on the ship's topside began to move. Slowly, deliberately, it turned, the barrel pivoting until it was aimed directly at the flagship. The crew on the bridge froze in place, eyes locked on the screen. There was no sound, no charging sequence, no visible power surge. It's just that single, precise movement, as if the ship had finally acknowledged their presence. A whisper of fear passed through the crew. Some stepped back from their stations. Others reached instinctively for weapon controls, though they knew their weapons would be useless if the old stories were true. Valak stood very still. He knew enough history to understand what might come next. Humans had never been a patient species. When they pointed their guns, they usually fired. He glanced at his weapons officer, who was waiting for an order that did not come. The comms officer tried again to make contact, voice trembling. Outside, the warship kept drifting closer, the black surface swallowing all light around it. The flagship's shields automatically raised to full, sensors struggling to keep a lock on the ship's exact position. At one moment, it seemed thousands of kilometers away. The next moment, it was close enough to fill the viewport. The crew began to realize something else. The warship was not drifting. It was matching their position perfectly, as if it had been here all along waiting for them to arrive. On the lower decks, some crew members swore they heard faint metallic footsteps echoing through the hull, though no one could explain how. Commander Valak's mind raced. If the stories were true, the humans never acted without purpose. If this ship had shown itself now, it meant something. He thought about retreat, but something in his gut told him the warship wouldn't allow it. His instincts screamed that the first shot would decide everything, and it would not come from them. The air on the bridge felt heavy, every breath harder than the last. The massive gun turret on the warship locked fully into place. For one long second, nothing moved. Then the flagship's alert sirens screamed, and a deep vibration rolled through the space between them. The kind of sound that only came before something devastating. The alarm echoed through every deck of the flagship, sharp and urgent. Commander Valak gripped the arm of his command chair, his eyes locked on the black silhouette outside. The massive human turret did not glow or hum, it simply fired. A beam of light, not blinding, but strangely clean and focused, crossed the void in less than a second. It slammed into the flagship's shields, and the entire ship lurched as though struck by a giant's fist. The shield's strength readout dropped, instantly, from full to half, with a single shot. The crew gasped, stunned that so much power could be packed into such a silent strike. There was no visible strain on the human ship. It did not move forward or pull back. It simply stayed in place, as if daring them to respond. Panic rippled through the bridge. Officers called out status reports, voices overlapping in fear. Valak kept his gaze steady, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Hold position," he ordered, though his own heart was pounding. Signaled for the comms officer to try again. This time the screen flickered to life, showing static for a moment before a figure appeared. The image was shadowed, but it was unmistakably human. The face was pale, framed by a dark, worn uniform. The eyes were cold and fixed directly on the commander. "This territory is under human quarantine," the voice said, deep and steady, carrying the weight of command. "Leave or be erased." The transmission ended before Valak could respond. The silence after the message was heavier than before, as if the words still hung in the air. The bridge crew stared at one another, some in disbelief, others in pure fear. Humans enforcing a quarantine? That made no sense. They had abandoned large-scale military operations centuries ago. A junior officer spoke up, her voice trembling. "Sir, I've seen that uniform in old records. It's from the Human Dominion fleet, the one that fought in the War of Extinction." Her words drew uneasy glances. Everyone had heard of that war when the humans had fought against 5 united alien empires in one, shattering them in less than a year. The radar officer interrupted. "Commander, there's movement." Valak turned to the main display. From the blackness on either side of the first warship, shapes began to appear, slipping out of invisibility like predators revealing themselves. 2 more massive human warships emerged, their hulls just as dark and scarred, their designs identical to the first. They positioned themselves with perfect precision, blocking the fleet's escape routes. The alien fleet's communications channels erupted with chatter. Captains demanded orders, some calling for immediate retreat, others for an attack before the humans could strike again. Valak knew neither option would work. The humans had them pinned. On the far end of the bridge, a senior weapons officer whispered to no one in particular, 3 ships. That's all it takes for them to wipe us out. Valak ignored the comment, though the thought dug into his mind. He had read reports of ancient battles where a single human warship had destroyed entire fleets, never leaving survivors to tell the full story. The humans made no further moves, no threatening gestures beyond their silent blockade. It was as though they were testing the fleet, waiting to see what decision would be made. Valak's instincts screamed at him to do something, but every possible action felt like a trap. If they attacked, they would be obliterated. They fled, the humans might see it as defiance and destroy them anyway. Then, without warning, the first human warship shifted its position. It turned just slightly, enough for its other turrets to align toward the nearest alien cruiser. That small movement sent a shiver through the crew. The humans weren't just pointing their weapons at the flagship anymore. They were targeting the entire fleet. Velok swallowed hard and opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, prepare for defensive maneuvers," he said, though in his gut he knew defense would be meaningless. His eyes flicked to the tactical display. The human ship's energy signatures were still unreadable. It was as though they didn't exist on any known spectrum until they chose to. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The human ships simply held their positions. Then the voice came again, cutting through the comms on every ship in the fleet. "You have 30 seconds to decide." No one spoke. Even the bridge crew barely breathed. The countdown began. Not from the humans, but from their own systems. Somehow the warships had overridden their computers to display the timer. Numbers flashed on every console, counting down the moments they had left. 2019. 18. Velok's mind raced. Was there a way to survive this without losing everything? He looked again at the human ships, silent and waiting, their black holes absorbing all light. He thought about the history he had read, about how humans never bluffed. The old records had said it clearly when they gave a deadline. It was not a threat, it was a promise. The countdown reached 10 seconds. The crew braced themselves, knowing the wrong choice here might be their last. Outside, in the cold darkness of space, the 3 human warships did not move, but their presence felt like an entire army pressing down on the fleet. At 0, something happened that none of them expected. At 0, every light on the alien fleet's bridges flickered, dimmed, and then returned. But in that brief second of darkness, the humans had already made their move. The nearest alien cruiser erupted in a silent flash, splitting into 2 molten halves before anyone could register the shot. No warning, no visible projectile, just instant destruction. The shockwave rattled the flagship's shield, sending officers sprawling across the deck. Commander Velok gritted his teeth and shouted for damage reports, but his mind was already racing ahead. The humans weren't going to negotiate. This was the opening move of total annihilation. "All ships return fire," Velok barked, and the fleet obeyed instantly. Dozens of plasma lances, antimatter torpedoes, and railgun slugs streaked toward the 3 warships. Space lit up with energy trails and detonations. For a heartbeat, it almost looked like the humans would be overwhelmed. But then the truth became clear. Their shields didn't just hold, they barely shimmered. The human vessels absorbed the assault as if it were little more than a drizzle against a fortress wall. The humans answered with terrifying precision. One beam from the lead ship lanced through an alien destroyer, cutting it cleanly in half. A torpedo from the second warship slipped past point defense systems and detonated inside the engine core of another cruiser, turning it into a spinning ball of wreckage. Every strike was surgical, deliberate, and final. The alien fleet's fire was wild and desperate, but the human fire was calm, calculated, and unstoppable. On the flagship's bridge, chaos erupted. Officers shouted over each other, tactical displays filled with red indicators marking lost ships. Fighter squadrons scrambled from hangars, trying to swarm the human warships, but even that tactic failed. The humans deployed point defense cannons that picked the fighters off with inhuman speed, each shot finding its mark as if the gunners could see into the future. "How are they predicting us?" the radar officer cried out. "It's like they know where we'll be before we move." Velok's stomach twisted. He'd read old intelligence reports that hinted at something terrifying. Human ships were not commanded by captains alone. They were linked to hybrid AI systems, combat minds that merged human instinct with machine calculation. Those minds could anticipate enemy movements in real time, making their ships feel like living predators. In the void, if the reports were true, then they weren't just fighting machines. They were fighting something far worse. Another alien cruiser exploded in a burst of fire and debris. The fleet was being dismantled ship by ship, without hesitation, without mercy. Velok tried to order a retreat, but the navigation officer's voice cut through the noise. "Sir, they've blocked every hyperspace vector. If we try to jump, we'll come out right in their kill zone." The human warships closed in slowly, like wolves tightening a circle. The lead ship's weapons shifted toward the flagship again. Valak's hands tightened into fists. If this ship went down, no one would survive to warn the galaxy. He opened a priority channel, broadcasting on every frequency. His voice was harsh, but steady. To the Galactic Council. If you are receiving, this humans are back. The words had barely left his mouth when the main view screen went white. A blast from the human warship smashed into their shields, nearly collapsing them. Systems failed across the bridge, sparks raining from consoles. The transmission might have gone through, or it might have been cut short, so Valak didn't know. The humans didn't rush to finish them. Instead, the three warships held position, almost as if deciding whether the flagship was worth destroying now or later. The tension was worse than the attack itself. Every second felt like borrowed time. Then the lead human ship turned slightly, breaking the standoff but only to shift its guns toward the remaining alien escorts. One by one, the escorts vanished in blinding flashes, leaving only the crippled flagship drifting in the dark. The human ships began to move again, surrounding it on three sides. Valak realized with a sinking feeling that the real message to the galaxy was about to be sent, and his ship was going to be the delivery. The humans activated a tight beam transmission. This time there was no static, no shadow. Captain's face filled the screen, cold and unreadable. "You've seen enough," he said simply, before the signal cut. The next moment, something even stranger happened. The human warships powered down their weapons and began to drift away. But Valak knew it wasn't mercy. They wanted him alive for a reason, and whatever that reason was. It would terrify the rest of the galaxy far more than his death ever could. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 100 star systems filled the air with shouts, overlapping in a storm of fear and disbelief. The emergency beacon from Commander Valak's fleet had reached them, incomplete, but damning. The words "humans are back" played over and over on the central display, the rest of the message lost in static. For decades, the Council had dismissed old war stories as exaggerated myths, cautionary tales told to frightened cadets. Now those myths were standing in real space again, with guns that could cut fleets apart in seconds. The Supreme Speaker slammed, a clawed hand on the table, silencing the chamber. "We need facts," they demanded. "Are these ships truly human?" Pale, narrow-eyed historian stepped forward from the observer's gallery. His name was Dr. Relin Marov, one of the last. Living experts on pre-withdrawal, human military history. His voice carried the weight of someone who had studied fear itself. "There's no doubt," he said. "The hull patterns, the armament layout, the energy signatures. These are Dominion fleet warships, the kind humans used in the War of Extinction. They are not relics. They are active, upgraded, and deadly." A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The Cordian delegate bared its fangs. Impossible. Humans dismantled their fleets after the treaties. We watched them stripped there. Shipyards bare. Marov shook his head. "You watched what they wanted you to watch. Humans never trusted the galaxy. They stored their fleets in places we could not find, waiting for a day they thought they might need them again." He hesitated before adding, "And if they've deployed them now, it means they believe that day has come." A counselor from the aquatic worlds flicked its fins nervously. "We should open negotiations before they escalate further." "No," another voice cut in, harsh and low, which was General Thurick of the Rim Guard. "You don't negotiate with humans when their guns are already aimed at your heart. You either submit or you prepare for war." The room erupted again, voices clashing. Some demanded immediate military mobilization, others argued for surrender to avoid annihilation. In the center of the debate, the Supreme Speaker leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What of the message?" Marov glanced at the display, hesitating. "The message was not to us," he said. "It was to everyone, a reminder of what humans are. Capable of the War of Extinction wasn't just a military campaign, it was psychological. It crushed armies and then made sure survivors carried the story home. Fear did their work for them, as if summoned by his words. The central display flickered. The static cleared, replaced by a live transmission. The chamber fell silent instantly. On the screen, a human stood in full view, the same cold-eyed Captain Valok had seen. His uniform bore no rank insignia, just a simple emblem, a black star with a single white line through it. "I speak for the Dominion fleet," the captain said. His voice was steady, deliberate. "You have forgotten the cost of crossing us. This will be your only reminder. Stay out of our territory. Do not interfere with our quarantines. Do not test our resolve." His gaze swept the room as if he could see each delegate through the camera. "We remember what you did. And we are not finished." The screen went black. The silence that followed was worse than the noise before. Even the boldest warhawks in the chamber didn't speak right away. The words carried more than a threat. They carried a promise, one rooted in a history too many had chosen to forget. Finally, the Supreme Speaker turned to General Thorek. How long would it take to rally every fleet? Thorek's answer was grim. Too long. If the humans come in force, we won't have time to stop them. Arov's voice was barely above. A whisper. Then you'd better hope they're not here to finish what they started. Far above the chamber, in the quiet void between stars, the 3 human warships drifted together in perfect formation. Their weapons were cold, their engines barely glowing, but their course was already set. Somewhere far from the Council. Another system was about to learn that the humans had returned, and the galaxy would soon understand that the first encounter had only been the beginning. The first reports came from the border worlds. First, they sounded like random military malfunctions. Orbital defense grids shutting down without warning. Patrol stations losing power in the middle of their shifts. Communications, satellites, going silent. But as the pattern grew, the truth became clear. The systems under attack weren't random at all. Every target was a military outpost or fleet supply hub belonging to the same factions that had once fought against the humans in the War of Extinction. Commander Rin of the Zorathi Guard stood in his operations room, staring at a star map that was rapidly turning red. One by one, markers for strategic bases vanished as if erased. "They're not destroying civilians," his intelligence officer said, voice tight. "Every strike is surgical, power plants untouched, cities untouched. But military assets, gone." That was what disturbed Rin most. The humans could have wiped entire planets clean, but instead they were dismantling the galaxy's defenses piece by piece. It was like watching a predator cripple its prey before going in for the kill. Worse, their ships were invisible until they chose to appear. Stealth systems far beyond anything on record masked their approach, making every attack a ghost strike in. The Galactic Council's central command hub panic meetings became the norm. Fleets were redeployed to protect vital sectors, but no matter how they moved, the humans seemed to know. Every time a fleet gathered, the humans hit somewhere else, forcing the ships to scramble and weaken their positions. It was as if the Dominion fleet had access to the Council's highest-level strategy sessions before they even happened. A desperate plan was formed to send a spy vessel close to one of the human warships, gather intel on its systems, and find a weakness. The ship chosen for the mission was the Swift Talon, crewed by the best infiltration pilots in the galaxy. They approached their target in silence, engines low, hull coated with the most advanced sensor-baffling material available. The human warship they found was massive, its black hull almost blending into the darkness of space. For several tense minutes, the Talon's crew scanned its surface, searching for vulnerabilities. There were no shield fluctuations, no energy surges to exploit. The ship looked almost dead. Encouraged, the Talon drifted closer. That was when the warship moved. Without warning, a section of its hull split open like a mouth. A faint pull seized the Talon, dragging it forward despite full reverse thrusters. Inside, the ship was swallowed by a dark hangar bay, its walls covered in strange, shifting panels. The moment the Talon crossed the threshold, every system went dead. The crew tried to send a distress signal, but nothing left the ship. The hangar sealed behind them, and then nothing. The Talon was never seen again. News of the loss spread fast, deepening the galaxy's fear. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were actively hunting. The Council ordered all non-essential fleets to fall back to core worlds, but the retreat only made things worse. Human warships began appearing in the skies above major planets, not firing, not making demands, just waiting. On the world of Valara Prime, the largest military capital in the sector, alarms blared as 3 human warships slid into high orbit. Their presence was like a shadow falling over the planet. Every defense cannon tracked them, every fighter squadron scrambled, but the humans made no move. Hours passed. The people on the surface began to wonder if the attack would ever come. In the Planetary Defense Command Center, Governor Levick paced restlessly. "Why aren't they firing?" he muttered. "What are they waiting for?" No one had an answer.
Outside,
The warships hung motionless against the stars, their black hulls absorbing the light of Valara's twin suns. It was as if they were studying the planet, weighing something unseen. And then, just as suddenly as they had arrived, they adjusted formation. Their guns were not aimed yet, but their positioning told every soldier watching the same thing. If the humans wanted to strike, there was nothing Valara could do to stop them. They weren't here for destruction. They were here to make the entire planet live in the knowledge that destruction could come at any moment. The siege had begun, and no one knew how long it would last. Valara Prime had been under the shadow of the human warships for 3 full days. The people no longer looked to the skies with curiosity. They avoided looking up at all. Streets were quiet, shops half empty, children kept indoors. Every hour, planetary defense forces ran silent drills, preparing for an attack they were certain would come, yet never did. The tension was worse than battle. Fear was stretching across the planet like a slow poison. In the Planetary Command Center, Governor Levick stared at the tactical display. The 3 human warships were still there, unmoving, their dark hulls blotting out patches of stars. "It's a siege without a shot fired," he said quietly. His military advisor didn't reply. Everyone in the room knew that the moment those ships moved, it would already be too late to stop them. Then, on the 4th day, a transmission came through. It was audio only, no visual feed. The voice was unmistakably human, calm, clear, and absolute. This was only a reminder. Do not test us again. There was no threat in the tone, no raised volume, yet the weight behind the words made the room fall silent as soon as the transmission ended. The warships shifted formation. Slowly, they turned away from Valara, their engines flaring with a deep, steady glow. But before they left orbit, an expanding ripple of energy pulsed from the lead ship, a planet-wide EMP wave. In an instant, every military system on Valara went dead. Weapons powered down, defense grids went dark. Fighter squadrons fell from the skies like stones before emergency thrusters could re-engage. Civilian systems remained untouched, but the planet's military infrastructure was permanently crippled. Governor Levick could only watch as the warships drifted away into the darkness, leaving behind a world that could no longer defend itself. They hadn't destroyed Valara Prime, but they had made it defenseless and worse. They had made it clear that they could return at any time. Word of the siege spread across the galaxy within hours. The message was the same on every news channel, every encrypted military feed, every whispered conversation in backroom bars. Humans are watching. Mahone, some worlds began dismantling their military programs altogether, hoping to show they weren't a threat. Others doubled their armaments in desperation, knowing it wouldn't matter, far beyond Valara's star. Deep in the cold reaches of space, more human warships gathered in silent formation. Their black hulls glimmered faintly in the starlight, weapons cold, engines low. It is. The fleet was vast, far larger than the Council had imagined. And as they turned toward a new, unnamed sector, one truth settled over the galaxy like a shadow. Valara had been only the first. The real campaign had not yet begun.